Howdy, Dennis Bradford here. Let's think some about being, feeling, and doing better. What's the justification for the Promoting Peacefulness method? That's really for you to provide. Give it a thorough test. My prediction is that you'll be really glad that you did. I myself wrote about how to dissolve unwanted emotions in a blog post in 2009. The first step I advocated then and now is critical, namely, accept full responsibility for your situation, for the quality of your emotional life. Why? Nothing external to you is able to affect you emotionally without your consent. That's impossible. If you're suffering from some intense unwanted emotion, such as fear, grief, anger, or loneliness, even though you didn't intend it, it's wholly your responsibility. Sadly and unnecessarily, many people fail to take that first step. Since you're solely responsible for whether you flourish emotionally or suffer emotionally, if you don't like your emotional situation, change it. Ultimately, emotions are choices. As an adult, you and only you are responsible for the quality of your thoughts. Who else could be? Therefore, since beliefs are nothing but thoughts to which we attach, and emotions require beliefs, you and only you are responsible for your emotions. However, this does not mean that you can change unwanted emotions directly. You've probably tried that and, to your chagrin, learned that it doesn't work. Trying to talk yourself out of feeling intense grief or fear, for example, always fails. Suppose that you just learned that your beloved mother died and you are grief-stricken. You try to talk your way out of it. Well, I knew that she was old and had heart disease. She had a good life, so I shouldn't be sad. Never should on an emotion. Instead, just accept it. Whenever we resist reality, we lose. Trying to talk your way out of an emotion doesn't work. The more we think and talk about something, the more it increases in importance. Accepting an emotion is not the same as acting on it, venting it. Don't repress it or vent it. Don't even think about the Promoting Peacefulness method either. Just do it. Practice promoting peacefulness. Stop thinking. Why? There's a critically important lesson here. All thoughts are resistance. What? It's true. As David Hawkins writes in Letting Go, all thoughts are resistance. How can that be? One way to think of it is that, as we've seen, to think or conceptualize is to separate, and separation is always the cause of suffering. Thoughts would never be useful if they weren't limited, perspectival. Since, though, they cannot capture the whole, they are always distorting. Similarly, ego is resistance. It's easy just to think or say that it's foolish to resist reality. In a case like this, though, we really want reality to be different than it is. You may wail, "I love my mother and don't want her to be dead." Exactly. You want reality to be other than it is. That's resistance. The thought that you want your mother to be alive when you realize she's dead is resistance. That's a clear example of how thoughts are resistance. They're egocentric. Your emotions are always created by your ego. What you're doing is identifying with a particular perspective and taking it to be the whole truth. No, it's just a perspective. Someone else may have a different perspective and not be emotionally troubled at all about your mother's death. The more you resist the reality that she is dead, the more grief you're causing yourself to suffer. You are identifying with your grief. Bad move. Instead, identify with the you who is witnessing the grief. I return to this in a forthcoming video. This is why sages like Hawkins recommend, without calling it by that name, the Promoting Peacefulness method. Hawkins, quote, "Allow yourself to have the feeling without resisting it, venting it, fearing it, condemning it, or moralizing about it. Drop judgment. It is just a feeling. Surrender all efforts to modify it in any way. Let go of wanting to resist the feeling. To be surrendered means to have no strong emotion, a letting go of attachments." End quote from Letting Go. Remember that, in addition to being a sage, he was also a clinical psychiatrist with decades of clinical experience. I'd say that's rather good justification for accepting the Promoting Peacefulness method. Wouldn't you? It should not surprise you that other sages make the same recommendation. For example, Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh writes in Being Peace, quote, "If I have a feeling of anger, I know that anger is me, and I am anger. I have to deal with my anger with care, with love, with tenderness, with nonviolence. If you cannot be compassionate to yourself, you will not be able to be compassionate to others." End quote. In The Heart of the Buddha's Teaching, he notes, similarly, that, quote, "All of our feelings, even difficult feelings like anger, can be embraced by us. Anger is a fire burning inside us, filling our whole being with smoke. Our perceptions are conditioned by the many afflictions that are present in us, such as anger, jealousy, and fear. All suffering is born from wrong perceptions." End quote. Elsewhere, he uses the analogy of cooking a potato. Just putting a potato in boiling water will cook it. Similarly, just being with an unwanted emotion will dissolve it. The heat of sustained non-judgmental attention dissolves it. Christian Michelson was not just someone who read Hawkins's books, but also met him. His peace process strikes me as pure Hawkins. There are other sages, too, who recommend essentially the same process, including the Buddha himself. When we stop identifying with unwanted emotions such as fear, anger, loneliness, and jealousy, they stop afflicting our lives. Notice them, accept them fully, and they'll disappear forever. However, there's a problem that some people have doing that. I discuss it in the next video. Let's end emotional distress.